just tell me, about the program and about, your situation.
Okay, so it's it's kind of one of those youth programs you don't know who you have until you get signups, and
Hmm.
then whoever shows up is what you got. Um, we have 3 weeks of practice before the first game. First game's on the third week. Um, First week of practice is no pads. You don't have helmets. You don't have shoulder pads. You have nothing. Second week of practice is helmet only, and if it's anything like it was last year, it's the entire week helmets only. And then the third week you go into shoulder pads and you can do your live tackling, which doesn't give you a lot of time for defense.
Right, right. Okay.
So yeah, like I said, I've predominantly been running uh, single wing. Last year before last was double wing. So that's kind of most of what I know.
Hmm.
Single wing, double wing, a little bit of spread. Like I said, I started noticing some similarities between spread and air raid, and just kind of more questions and more questions and more questions pop up. So just kind of like I said, you go down that rabbit hole and you just get lost.
Oh yeah.
Um, so yeah, but like I said, so pretty much religiously on my team this year, I will probably get 14U.
Hmm.
A lot of those kids are going to be kids I had last year, and last year, like I said, the offense we had was just tailor made for single wing. We had big kids, slow kid, no speed. Um, but the offense was tailor made for single wing, but I couldn't get them to buy in. And that's kind of what I'm starting to notice a lot is kids don't want to buy into kind of the ground and pound offense anymore. Especially like I said, what they see on TV.
Yeah,
That's what
exactly.
they that's what
Exactly.
they
Yeah. Yeah.
um I've always kind of shied away from the whole passing thing because it's all right. So we're this young. Every ball we throw looks like a rainbow, you know. So three things can happen when you throw the ball. I guess two of them aren't good. So yeah, that was kind of my mentality before, and I started looking at YouTube, and it was I stumbled across Lasker,
Hmm.
and they were talking about the middle school air raid.
Hmm.
Got interested in that, started looking some more and looking some more, and it's like, all right, so here I am now, thinking I might be able to do this. Um,
Right.
I will religiously get kids, uh, 4 or 5 that you got to hide. You know what I'm saying?
Hmm.
So, um, not a whole lot of size and just a little speed. And the speed, some of the speed you get is he's built like a twig.
Right.
Yeah, but runs like the wind. Can't take too many hits because you know how that goes.
Right.
So, yeah, that's kind of what I get every year.
How many do you how many do you typically keep on the team, like numbers wise when you get a full squad?
Our full squad, our max is 25 kids. I don't ever
Okay.
get anywhere close to that. I'm usually
Oh,
sitting around
if
60.
if you were if you were let me rephrase, I guess. If you were to if you had your choice, like
Mhm.
what would your cutoff be if you had them, if you can go, if you had say you had equipment for 60 kids, right?
Right,
Now most coaches wouldn't want to keep 60 because that's just too much. Most of those kids won't play.
right.
Like for example, for me with middle school, we had to have tryouts, and my cutoff number, I for one, I had to have a cutoff number to have enough kids be able to fit on one bus, school bus with equipment and everything like that. So my cutoff was 44.
Okay.
And and knowing that it was only seventh and eighth graders for me, knowing that a lot of those seventh graders wouldn't play, and typically I treated seventh grade year as like a developmental year, unless they were really really super talented, then they would play a little bit more.
Hmm.
But so most of those kids didn't really play. That was kind of their developmental year. But I had 44 just for the depth purposes of it. So if you
Yeah.
had your choice, what would your cutoff number? I guess would ask.
I'd like about 30. I think I'd probably cut it off at 30. That way I still have depth,
Right.
and I still get fresh legs on the field in
Yeah.
any position.
Okay.
And
what does your coaching staff look like? Like, is it just you, or you got another guy, or how many coaches usually do you have with you?
It's it's myself. I've got one, two other coaches beside myself.
Okay, so you actually had more coaches because when I was head coach, it was me and another guy, so we were doing everything. Just and I had three coaching positions available, and we just could not get that other spot filled. So you already have a bigger staff, which would help. That
Yeah, I've
helps.
been down that road before.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, I guess just you start you want so you say you want to go into the area, or you're not sure yet. Or have you made your decision that you want to go down this road, or you're just not sure yet?
No, I'm all in.
You're all in.
I'm
Okay.
all
I
in.
like to hear that. I mean, it is definitely fun. That makes it fun for the kids. So I guess start it off. I guess just with the questions you have. If you want, go ahead and ask whatever questions you need to ask first, and we can go from there. As far as but before we do that, when do you actually start?
Oh, we actually start practice in August. It's yeah,
Okay, so you're. I'm glad you're getting this. You're doing this. You're getting out ahead of this thing.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Good.
I,
That's
I
good.
did not want to go into practice and not
Yeah.
know anything. That'd
No,
be
I
dumb.
hear you. I hear you. No, I'll be happy to help. I mean, um, here's the first thing. When I went into this, and when I first was the head coach, when I took over as head coach, I know I wanted to get into the spread, um, but I didn't know exactly. Me personally, I fell in love with watching. I was a big. I'm obviously an Ohio State fan, but I fell in love with watching Urban Meyer at Florida, how he would spread the teams out and run with Percy Harvin.
Right,
So that's what I started trying to do. So what I did is when I first got my team or my players, so we had to have tryouts. So I actually had cuts. I would first, because I knew that I wanted to have at least 3 or 4 guys that I could really count on, right?
right.
So during those first few days, I was doing things or doing drills so that I could find a way to identify those top 3 guys. That was the first thing. And I was saying, okay. And I had a position picked out. So it would be my H position. I had a position picked out. So that's going to be my number one guy. That's going to be the position that my number one athlete plays.
Okay,
Because that's going to be my Swiss Army knife. I'm going to move him around. I'm going to throw him the ball. I'm going to move him, motion him into the backfield, do all kinds of different things with him. So I have to identify who that kid potentially could be.
okay,
And then from there, I would go on to my running back. Obviously, the kid that can throw the best, he's going to have the, if it's obvious that Swiss Army got knife kid that is my best quarterback, then so be it. Then I have to find somebody else. But I'm trying to identify my top 4 athletes, and then from there, I kind of plug and play with them. So that would be the first thing. Second thing, I would kind of identify what plays you think you would want to run or how many plays you would want to run. I mean, I know going into air raid for the first time, you probably have no idea. My recommendation would be 2 to 3 run plays. Especially at your age, at the 14U, quick game is probably going to be your most reliable, those quick throws.
right.
So you're talking about, stick, corner, slant flat would be a good one. I would say 2 or 3 of those, maybe
So
two drop back passes, which would be like 4 verts and maybe like shallow cross or wide
okay.
cross, and then 2 or 3 screens, and then that's your playbook.
What'd you say? Your drop back was?
4
Across?
verts, 4 verts. You could be wide cross, could be shallow cross. Those are all
Okay.
pretty good plays. Maybe you're not going to be using much
No.
of the drop back pass, especially that age group, because it's a longer developing play. Now, if you watch last year enough, I kind of adopted what he talked about with 4 verts. 4 verts turned into a quick game for me too, because
Okay.
we ran that 70% of the time because we would just each receiver on the field had an option route. They had based on what the coverage they saw, they had either they were going deep or they were running a 5-yard hitch. So that turned into a real, and we rep that enough that our quarterback could identify that. Pre-snap, he'd say, "Okay, I'm going here right now."
Right.
because he's open and he would just turn and throw it. He wouldn't even get into a drop. So that turned into another quick game. So really, we had four. So I mean, I wouldn't even count four verticals as a drop back pass, really. So, and really, the last year of middle school, I think I called the only other drop back I really had was shallow cross that I carried that year, and I think we called it 3 times the entire season.
Okay.
So I mean, at that age group, we didn't really use it much. So I mean, it all depends on you. If you got bigger size, you get better linemen, then yeah, you probably could, call these. You're gonna have more protection, longer protection. It's all that's all personal preference, really.
Mhm.
But those are those, So again, 2 to 3 runs. I would say majority of your playbook is gonna be your quick game. So I would say 3 to 4 quick game, two to
Okay.
two drop back, and maybe 2 to 3 screens.
Okay.
And I can run you through all the stuff that I've ran. And if you watch my videos, I'm basically going through stuff that I've ran before, and that we're also carrying into the high school as well. So worse than the high school. So
Okay.
I would just develop figure out what plays you want, and then we can go into installs. And I mean, that's later on down the road, I guess,
Yeah. Yeah.
in another video or another session, because we'll be here for a while. So I guess just let me know what kind of questions you have first. I can see if I can answer those first.
Yeah. So like you're saying, your Swiss Army knife, the guy, is that your F, or is that going to be your tailback?
He's going to be my 2 best athletes on the field are going to be my H, which is my slot receiver.
Okay.
Typically the slot receiver on the left side, because majority of the quarterbacks are right-handed. Now if it switches and the quarterback's a lefty, more comfortable to throw the ball on the right side, because it's just the way their hips are. They're already looking to the right, So that kind of plays a figure into me. So I kind of pay attention to what hand the quarterback plays with, and that'll intertwine between my H, and then my next best player, my next best athlete is my F, or my running back.
Okay.
So
So your two best athletes are your H and your running back.
yeah.
So what, your running back, downhill runner, or just is he
I mean,
a football player?
either or. The last year I was head coaching. I mean, it's really just what kind of personnel you have. The last year I was head coach, my running back there, he was like a slasher. He could have played in the slot as well. Actually, in fact, we actually had my H and my F during tryouts in the first week of practice switched, and my actual tailback was playing the H position, and the H was playing the F. And then we said, well, no, let's change it. Let's flip it, see how this looks. And we fell in love with that. So, I mean, if it was me personally, the type of kids that we get here, we're in the South, so we get some of those little slashy athletes.
Yeah.
So, and that's more my style. That my H is the guy that can make a guy miss in a phone booth. So I'm looking for that guy that's really, really good in the open field, and I had that. So that's what I'm trying to identify first. And then my running back, if I had my choice, he would be almost the same player like that, because I'm going to throw him the ball out of the backfield quite a bit, and I want him to be able to move, and make people miss in the open field.
Okay.
So those two players right there are kind of almost interchangeable. But the year before, I had a real big, big, bruising tailback. So it really kind of is the personnel that you have. Obviously the number one thing I look for in the running back is ball security for me.
Right.
If he can't hold on to the ball, then I can't trust him back there.
Right. Yeah.
So the biggest body size I look for is I like my outside receivers to be tall and lengthy, because we throw them a lot of fades, especially in the red zone, and we just want them to go up and get it.
Speed
is good, and yeah, speed is definitely good, but I'm looking for more height, more of it, because typically I would like them a lot taller than the average corner that they usually see. Because usually you're matching up with a safety or a linebacker in the slots. They're going to be a little bit taller, so it's obviously not as good of an idea to throw a jump ball in the middle of the field. So we try and place those outside guys to be a little bit taller. And I mean, speed is obviously always good. I mean, I'm looking for the fastest kids too as well.
Okay.
But yeah, that's the kind of body type I'm looking for in those. And I really don't. I mean, Every once in a while, I've carried a tight end. You know, I don't really use tight end with hand in the dirt. It's usually more like a sniffer back or H back. So he's kind of behind the line, offset.
Your tight end?
Yeah, I mean, I've never really used one with a hand in the dirt tight end.
Mhm.
He's been kind of like that H back to kind of sitting like a fullback, behind the line, sitting behind like either offset at the tackle or right behind the guard kind of thing, where we move him around like that.
Okay.
Yeah. So I mean,
Okay.
I've used that I used that more my first year as a head coach. Kind of went away from it more to the traditional just four wide receivers later on. And plus, we never really had a guy that could really play it body type wise. So we just didn't really have a need for it.
Typical tight end build for that spot?
Yeah, yeah.
No.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, you're looking for that mismatched kid, that tall, big kid that can move. He doesn't need to be that shifty type of kid, but big kid, good hands, can block well. That goes to all our receivers. We tell them, just the simple little saying, no block, no rock. So if you don't block well, you're not gonna really throw you the ball. So
Okay. Yeah. All right. So what do you do? What do you do to kind of find those kids? You said your like your tryouts.
yeah. So the first day of tryouts, we're putting them through agility drills. 40-yard dash, the L drill, 5-10-5, those things, and we can kind of tell from there. And then we'll go into ball drills. Say, okay, if you want to play running back, go here, and we'll put them through a couple drills as far as moving the drills. We'll do a little swing drill. We're throwing the ball out to them. Receivers, we're gonna just put them through routes on air. So we're gonna say, okay, we're gonna run this route, and we're gonna run this route, and we're gonna run, just put them through a few drills, and then we can start identifying that. We can
Mhm.
start seeing, okay, this kid, and then we start going from there. It
Okay.
just consistently builds from there.
Okay.
Yeah, it's
And
basic drills. I mean, the first day, as basic drills as you possibly can get. I think like we got through like 1 to 2 routes. We would always open up with just verticals, just go deep, and we want to see the quarterback open it up and see how far you can throw it, how good it looks coming out of your hand. So we're kind of by evaluating two types of players at the same time. So we're evaluating the quarterbacks, who can play quarterback, who can throw the ball, as well as the receivers.
okay. And you're letting offensive linemen run this, or are they somewhere
Well,
else?
then we'll have offense line go back there, and we'll teach them a few things like obviously stances, because at that age, if they've never played, you really got to go get back to the basics. And as far as teaching how you want them to stance, splits, all the whole 9 yards there. So we'll go through that, and then if they get to it, they'll start probably maybe even putting them through the cage where they just kind of walk low just so they can stay low, and then maybe if we have time that day one, just kind of fire out on a first step kind of thing where they're in a 2-point stance or even a 3-point stance, and they just got to come out and hit a pad with their hands, just fire out and see how fast they come out of their stance.
Okay. So guys that don't make the cut, kind of your receivers, whatever, you send them over to the offensive line, or because I'm
I mean, if they're tiny, and we had some itty bitties,
yeah.
they would have no business. But what I would do is my 4 receiver spots I had on my left side, it was X and H, and then on my right side it was my Z was in the slot, and I know it's backwards. Some other guys have Z on the outside. For whatever reason, I put Z in the slot. So H and Z were my slot guys, X and Y were my outside guys,
Mhm.
and then obviously my F and then my quarterback. We call him either star, or we just call him Q. Right. So once I established my number one guys there, for the most part, or at least what I thought were my number one guys, I would try and identify, okay, I want him at X, I want him at H, I want him at Z, I want him at Y, and then we'll build from there. Then I would try and identify, okay, who's my number twos, and then from there, the leftovers, I guess you would say, would be like, okay, go work with the X's, and I want you to work 2 positions. So if you're the X, I need you to learn the X and the Y, because
Okay.
it's gonna be the mirrored position. They're gonna be doing essentially the same thing, just
Mhm.
on different spots, and the alignment is pretty much the same. The only difference is if we went to like almost an inverted, like an inverted 2x2 where X was on the line, H was off, and then we would have Z on the line and Y would be off. That's the only thing. That's the only difference. As far as routes, they would be the same on
Okay.
either side. So, and then my slot guys basically the same thing. The only difference is Z was with that more that bigger, thicker kid that we could potentially move down to a tight end or an H back if we needed to. If we needed to get to that, if we wanted just to not change personnel, but just keep him on the field and also just shift over to another formation.
All right.
But even Z and H, they knew their positions because we had some shifty guys that were playing Z as well, just trying to get as much speed on the field.
Right.
And then we would break it up into our running backs. And a lot of times for us, we would say, "Oh, I go with the running backs," and until we really established what we were trying to do offensively, like as far as throwing the ball as much,
Mm-hmm.
it's funny because when we would say, "Okay, go with the running back," we'd have 30 guys go with the running backs, and we would have 5 or 6 receivers, and we say, "All right, that's all well and good. You can go play running back, but you might be the 7th running back on the depth chart and never see a carry where you could be 2 or 3, maybe even number 1 receiver here and get 6 or 7 passes a game. What are you going to choose?"
Right. Right. Okay.
So, and then eventually, once we started developing or showing, what we were doing as far as, in the, during seasons and stuff like that, and winning games, winning championships, all of a sudden then that changed. And also we had like 80 kids go, not 80 kids, but, 40 kids going for receivers and only 5 or 6 kids going for running back, which is okay. That's fine. We can do that because we can split the receivers up a lot more evenly with 4 spots to open up.
Right. Right.
So,
okay. So that you do that like your first week or your first.
Yeah, I was required to have 5 days of tryouts. I mean, I'm kind of like you, where in middle school, man, they did. I mean, it was weird because some middle schools in North Carolina would get summer workouts. Like, so they would get 2 weeks in the summer, like in
Oh,
June,
that'd be great.
where they were working stuff. I know. I don't know if you've ever seen some other videos where I'm talking to Randy. If you've seen my other videos where I talk to Randy, he coaches up in the northern portion of North Carolina, and he gets. I was so jealous of him because he would get 2 weeks in June to work his boys out. And I said, and I wouldn't get to see my boys until the first day of school.
Right.
And from there, we would literally have 12 practices before we were playing our first game. And that's not including like, hey, what if it's down North Carolina in August, it's unbearably hot sometimes. So if there's a super hot day or it's bad weather, you lose that day. That's a lost day. So we really had to cram what we were doing into it, really maximize our time as far as practices. So we were required to have 5 days of tryouts. Now, in those tryouts, really only 2 of them were true tryouts.
Mm-hmm.
The day 3 through 5, I was installing. That first couple days, I'm trying to identify players.
Okay.
Just trying to identify what I got, where I have them, and then from there, we would move on to, okay. Then we started installing stuff. We would start play say. So that third day, it was okay. I'm going to start. Third day, you go over here. You go over here. I want you over here. I want you over here.
Okay.
We work from there.
All right. So offensive line, how big are your splits?
We like to try and keep it at 2 feet. A lot of times what we would do is have them reach out. And if they can put their hands on their shoulder, the other shoulder pads, that's good. That was wide enough because you'll notice as the year goes on, they get closer and closer. So you got to keep reminding them, hey, widen the splits, check your splits. And we tried to push the limit as much as possible. So we would kind of arc the line. So we would tell, all right, center, you line up. Then the guard, try and put your toes at his heels, and then the tackle, put your toe on, line it up with the tackle's heel. And it was almost looked like the tackles were in the backfield. But our whole goal with that was just because you're moving back doesn't mean the defensive line can move up. They still got to stay across the line, where the ball is.
Right.
And the whole, and I think I got this from Dane, who was it? Dular. We watched a session with him, and someone said more space equals more time. And I fell in love with that saying, where you now created further space, further distance for that defensive end or that defense tackle to travel, which gives your offensive lineman more time to set up in their pass protection
Right.
before the defensive lineman almost even gets there, which creates more time for the quarterback.
Right.
Because
Okay.
a true defensive lineman, and I'm a firm believer of this, is not going to actually get into his full-on pass rush until he starts engaging contact with the defensive lineman or offensive lineman. So if he can create space by simple alignment, then if you teach him how to vertical set backwards, that creates even more space before that defensive lineman can actually get into his pass rush. So it creates more time for the quarterback to, go through progressions, go through reads. And so fell in love. It was a Dular. It might have been Patrick Taylor that said this. But more space equals more time. That was a thing I fell in love with, and it's true.
Right. Right. I think
So,
yeah. I heard it somewhere before. Couldn't figure
yeah.
out. Okay, so that seems like a big split.
It is. It's kind of intimidating, but it causes the defensive lineman to spread out as well, because their assignments are, hey, I need to be in the middle of this B gap, and that B gap's way over here. Okay, open it up. And on top of that, it widens out the defensive ends. And again, they have to go travel a further distance to get to the quarterback. So you spread them out as well.
Right.
Okay. So we're trying to use the entire width of the field. So I mean, you spread them out, then that spreads your wide receivers out. And so it spreads the linebackers out, then obviously the corner. So it spreads everybody out. So we're trying to use as much of the field as possible.
Right. How far are your wide receivers? How far is your slot from your tackle?
If you have markings on the field.
No, we don't have any markings.
No. Okay. So then what I typically would do for my if I was in a 2x2 set, and we can I kind of, well, I don't know if you can see this little clock here on there because it's running out of time.
Yeah,
so
I don't know what that's about.
Well, I don't have full subscription to Zoom, so it only gives me a certain amount of time. So that's why I was talking about multiple sessions.
Okay,
so,
yeah.
So we're gonna obviously have to cut this one short.
No worries.
But what I would typically do with my slot receivers would be about 7 yards off the tackle. You got to kind of eyeball that. So 7 yards, outside the tackle.
Okay.
And then from there, it would be another 7 to 10 yards for my outside receivers off the slot receiver. So I would kind of build it from the inside out.
Okay. Wide receiver.
And then as far as who's on, who's off, what I would tell if the receiver is in the slot, I'd say your front foot needs to be on his back heel. Line it up.
Your the slots receivers front foot needs to be
on the outside receiver's back heel. If he was on, if they were on, but like on my right side, so my Z is on the line, my slot, and then my Y is
back. Quarterback's heels at 5 or toes at 5.
Quarterback's heels probably at 5. I would say that's good depth, unless you want to go pistol. If you want to go pistol, then you got to move them up a little bit.
Then his heels are at 3. Running backs' heels are what? Heels are at 5.
5, maybe 6.
Okay, so I guess the one thing that's kind of got me is that you get all of the running back is always moving. He's either a sidecar or he's right behind the quarterback. He's also what does he have a spot?
Well, it's really personal preference, to be honest with you. I mean, I've kind of done it both, all different ways. I've used pistol, I've used sidecar, I've used offset. Because obviously you're 100% in shotgun. One thing we like about pistol is because obviously if you go sidecar 90% of the time, defense knows, okay, if the running back's lined up on the on the right side of the quarterback, then he's probably coming across to get the handoff. He's not, 90% of the time, he's not going to let's go back to this. 90% of the time, he's not going to come across and come on back to the right. So all right, so real quick here, I got about 3 minutes. This is my ace formation. I don't know if you can see that. And that's kind of how it is. I fell in love with kind of the offset. I know obviously it's not much different because I mean we've gone sidecar, we've gone outside, I've done pistol, I've done ball. I mean, I've used less and less sidecar, where I've had him here. And if I had him Here he'd be pretty much just lined up right over the guard.
Right.
If he's offset, typically what I say is 1 yard behind, 1 yard over.
Okay.
1
Okay.
yard over, 1 yard behind, and pistol. Typically we go 1.5 to 2 yards behind. And then obviously the quarterback would move up.
Right.
So I mean, we would move him up just a little bit. Pistol's good because obviously it's kind of a guessing game on which way they're going. I like offset personally because again, we would sometimes motion him in the backfield to get 2 backs in here. So this again was our Swiss Army knife guy. So that's our 2-back set, right? Our 2x2 set there.
Okay.
I'm gonna go through this kind of stuff kind of quick. We're gonna unfortunately have to finish it up for this session, but I can set up another one here. Let's see what we got. Let's just do it early. This is an example of a 3x1 set for us. So this is how I would set up my 3x1. Now I would probably have him a little wider than what I had here. That's the 3x1 set there. It would just be the opposite if it was late. And we call it early just because the R means 3x1 to the right, and late would be, with the L, 3x1 to the left. That's kind of how we used it.
Is he always opposite of the trips? Because I've heard some.
Yeah, that's what we try to do, because a lot of times when we run our concepts, the rule was always he's going to swing away from the trips.
Okay.
So that was one rule that I had. But I mean, what we would do would give him we've used the word east and west. And east, we would just yell out east, and that would just tell him to move to this side, to right.
Right.
We'd say west. Now, if we didn't say anything, and based on the play, he would know where to line up. So if we said early stick right, he would know, okay, if it's early stick right, if it's already early, I'm going to be on the left side here, and I'm swinging out here. And then just run the concept of these 3 receivers. So there's several little rules that we built in that we can talk about through the install. So.
Okay. Yeah. So your spacing still stays the same with your receivers in early and late and.
Yeah, I would just move it out, and we